The truth they never told you about awakening, part 1. There are moments in life when everything fractures in an instant, when a single thought slices through reality like lightning, separating everything into before and after. For one man, that moment came in the form of a quiet sentence: "I can't live with myself any longer." At first glance, those words sounded like defeat, the cry of a soul crushed beneath its own suffering. But hidden inside that despair was a mystery so deep it shattered his entire identity. If I can't live with myself, who is the I, and who is the myself? That question wasn't just philosophy, it was a spiritual detonation, an earthquake that reduced everything he believed himself to be into dust. And when the dust settled, the man who had spoken those words was gone. The next morning, the old self no longer existed. The mind that had tormented him for years had gone silent. The past had vanished like smoke in the wind. Was this what we call enlightenment? Or was it something even more radical, something far darker and far more powerful than the blissful fantasy sold in modern spirituality? You've been told that awakening means peace, joy, and effortless happiness, that once you wake up, all pain disappears, and you float through life in a permanent state of serenity. But what if that's the biggest lie ever told? What if real awakening is not the end of suffering, but the complete destruction of everything that suffers? If you've ever felt that something doesn't quite add up, that what's being taught doesn't match what's real, you're not alone. Because what the world sells as awakening has very little to do with truth. It's been rebranded, polished, and packaged into something easy to consume. An aesthetic of calm faces and filtered sunsets, where pain has no place and growth comes without effort. But awakening doesn't look like that. It's not soft, it's not clean, it's not pretty, it's raw, it's violent. It tears through your illusions and leaves you naked before yourself. Social media feeds you slogans: raise your vibration, let go of negativity, be present. They sound good, but beneath the glittering surface hides a quiet poison, because every time you try to become awakened, you reinforce the illusion that there's someone who needs to awaken. That's the paradox. The ego loves chasing enlightenment because it means it still gets to exist. The truth? Awakening isn't about becoming more. It's about losing everything you're not. Look at how the story is usually told. People talk about Eckhart Tolle's sudden transformation, the night his mind went silent, the instant peace that followed. But they skip the part that really matters. They skip the collapse. They skip the years of torment, the depression, the suicidal thoughts, the unbearable weight of self-hatred. His awakening wasn't a victory, it was a death. And out of that death came something the world can barely comprehend. The real problem is that modern spirituality has turned awakening into a consumer product, a lifestyle for the comfortable, not a path for the courageous. It tells you that enlightenment is a permanent state of bliss, that you can meditate your way out of pain, that you can buy peace through courses and retreats. But that's not transformation, that's sedation. The truth is much harder to swallow. Awakening demands the complete collapse of who you think you are. You can't skip the suffering. You can't skip the confrontation with your own mind. Eckhart Tolle didn't transcend suffering by avoiding it. He went so deep into it that his identity broke apart. And that's what real awakening is, when the mind's grip finally snaps, not through willpower, but through complete surrender. That's not something you can fake, and it's not something you can sell. It's not a 5-step method or a catchy affirmation. It's an internal implosion, the death of the false self. The self-help industry tells you, think positive, stay high vibe. But what if the real path is the opposite? What if true freedom is found not in escaping pain, but in walking straight into it, without resistance, without fear, without trying to fix it? When you run from suffering, it follows you. When you face it fully, it dissolves. That's the paradox Tolle discovered. He didn't wake up because he learned a technique. He woke up because he lost the one who was trying to learn. Most people are terrified of this kind of awakening. They want peace, not death. They want comfort, not collapse. But as long as you're trying to protect yourself from destruction, you're protecting the very illusion that keeps you asleep. Awakening isn't a gentle sunrise. It's a lightning strike. It burns away everything false until nothing remains but pure awareness, the silent witness that has been there all along. And that's where the truth begins. Part 2. The death before the light. People love to romanticize awakening. They imagine it as a burst of divine light, a soft smile, a mind that suddenly becomes peaceful. But they forget what comes before that light. Before the stillness, there is always a storm. Before the peace, there is always destruction. Eckhart Tolle didn't step into enlightenment through meditation retreats or affirmations. He walked through hell. His awakening began when everything he believed himself to be collapsed into nothing. He didn't find freedom by escaping pain. He found it when pain became unbearable and his mind simply couldn't continue carrying it. And this is the truth no one wants to hear. Awakening is not a reward for good behavior. It's not a gift that appears after years of spiritual discipline. It's what happens when your old identity dies. People don't like that word, death, but that's what it is. Not the physical death of the body, the psychological death of the self, the death of the story you've been telling yourself since childhood. That story, I am this, I want that, I need to become something, is what keeps you trapped. Every fear, every desire, every insecurity, every failure you feel grows from that root. And awakening tears that root out of the ground. It's not pleasant. It's not comfortable. When your mind begins to dissolve, it feels like losing your anchor. You don't know who you are anymore. You don't know what's real. And that confusion is the price of freedom. Imagine living your whole life in a house filled with noise. The chatter never stops. The radio of your thoughts constantly playing in the background. Then one morning you wake up and it's silent, completely silent. At first the silence feels wrong. You've spent decades identifying with that noise. You've called it me, and now it's gone. What's left? Nothing. Just awareness itself. That's what happened to Tolle. One night his mind shattered under its own weight. The next morning the torment was gone, not because he found the answer, but because the one asking the question had vanished. He didn't achieve awakening. He lost himself completely. And in that emptiness, awareness remained. This is the part of his story no one likes to talk about, because it doesn't sell books, courses, or retreats. It doesn't promise happiness. It doesn't promise bliss. It promises truth. And truth doesn't care about your comfort. You see, the self that wants to be enlightened is the very thing that must dissolve. The mind that wants peace is the source of disturbance. The seeker who searches for freedom is the one keeping it out of reach. That's the paradox. You can't wake up while you're still trying to wake up. The act of seeking keeps the illusion alive, and yet people keep searching. Year after year, book after book, meditation after meditation, hoping for that one moment when everything finally clicks. But awakening isn't something that clicks. It's something that breaks. It breaks you open. It breaks your false certainty. It breaks your image of who you think you are. And once you're broken enough, there's no one left to repair. Part 3. The Trap of Modern Awakening. Modern spirituality has turned awakening into an Instagram aesthetic. Pastel colors, mantras, and soft smiles. But behind that glossy surface hides a dangerous illusion, the belief that you can bypass the struggle. Just think positive, they say. Let go of negativity. Be grateful. It sounds inspiring, but it's poison when misunderstood. Because when you suppress your pain, it doesn't disappear. It buries itself deeper. When you deny your darkness, it controls you from the shadows. Real awakening demands you to see everything, the anger, the sadness, the fear, the loneliness, not to reject them, but to see through them. You can't transcend what you refuse to face. This is why toxic positivity is one of the greatest spiritual traps of our time. It tells you that negative emotions are failures, that suffering is a sign of weakness. But suffering isn't failure, it's the door. Eckhart Tolle didn't escape suffering, he surrendered to it. He allowed the pain to burn away everything false. That's why his transformation was permanent. Because it wasn't about adding something new, it was about removing everything that wasn't real. You see, the mind always wants to fix things. It wants to improve, to achieve, to control. But awakening isn't self-improvement. It's self-destruction. It's the end of control. And that's why it terrifies people. Because when you realize you're not the one in control, the ego begins to panic. It will fight. It will resist. It will do anything to survive. It will even pretend to be spiritual. It will meditate. It will chant. It will seek teachers and read books, all while secretly keeping itself alive. That's the cleverness of the ego. It can wear a monk's robe or a guru's smile. It can use the language of awakening to avoid awakening itself. The truth is brutal. The moment you try to control your mind, you're already trapped by it. The more you fight your thoughts, the louder they become. The more you chase silence, the more noise you create. Awakening is not about silencing the mind. It's about seeing that the mind has never been you. When you stop identifying with thought, the noise loses its grip. The thoughts don't stop, but they stop mattering. That's the freedom Tolle found. He didn't kill his mind. He stopped believing it was real. And when that belief collapsed, peace revealed itself. Not as a reward, but as what had always been there. This is why chasing enlightenment never works. You can't chase what you already are. Part 4. The Illusion of Attainment. The greatest lie ever told in spirituality is that enlightenment can be achieved. That if you just read the right book, follow the right teacher, repeat the right mantra, you'll arrive somewhere called awakening. But the moment you turn truth into a goal, you lose it. The industry of awakening thrives on this illusion, convincing people they are always one step away from what they already are. One more retreat, one more course, one more secret technique. And so the mind keeps chasing itself in circles, trying to think its way out of thought. But you can't think your way into silence. You can't use the mind to escape the mind. And yet, that's what most people are doing. Trying to use effort to dissolve the very thing that creates effort. Eckhart Tolle's awakening didn't come from striving. It came from collapse. He didn't master the mind. The mind simply stopped pretending to be him. That's why his story feels unsettling. Because it wasn't about achievement. It was about annihilation. And that's why true awakening will never be popular. It can't be sold, branded, or simplified into slogans. Because it demands everything from you. Everything false, everything temporary, everything you've ever identified as you. Real transformation isn't an upgrade, it's a dismantling. It doesn't give you a better version of yourself. It removes the version altogether. That's why so many seekers remain stuck in endless searching. Because the very idea that there's something to find keeps the illusion alive. You can't awaken tomorrow. Because there is no tomorrow. You can only see what has always been here, right now. Part 5. the darkness before dawn. People adore the image of enlightenment, the peaceful face, the radiant glow, the calm voice, but few understand the dark night that comes before it. Before Tolle became a teacher, he was a man drowning in despair, not the casual sadness that comes and goes, a suffocating, relentless inner storm, self-hatred, fear, meaninglessness, the constant battle of thoughts tearing each other apart. And one night, that inner war reached its limit. I can't live with myself any longer. Those words were more than desperation. They were a fracture in consciousness itself, because in that moment something realized there were two of him, the one who suffered and the one who saw it. That realization wasn't gentle, it shattered everything, and when the pieces fell, there was no one left to pick them up. This is the doorway no one talks about, the entry point that doesn't feel divine at all. It feels like madness, like death, like disappearing, because in a way, it is. The self you've protected your entire life, the one built from opinions, fears, and memories, begins to dissolve. And when it does, the world looks the same, but nothing feels the same. At first, it's terrifying. The silence feels unnatural. The emptiness feels wrong. You've lived so long as a character in your own story that when the story ends, you don't know what's left. But in that void, something extraordinary appears. Awareness. Pure, unfiltered, timeless awareness. And that's the paradox. The moment the self dies, life finally begins. Tolle didn't enter a blissful trance. He entered a vast stillness, one that had no boundaries and no him inside it. The thoughts that haunted him simply dissolved, not because he fought them, but because the one who believed them was gone. That's the secret hidden inside every true awakening. You don't gain peace. You lose the one who disturbs it. But make no mistake, this process is not graceful. It's not a clean transition. It's messy. It's disorienting. It's the collapse of identity itself. And yet, this is what every seeker is unconsciously longing for. Not more pleasure, not more control, but freedom from the very self that suffers. Part 6. The real meaning of surrender. Surrender. It sounds poetic, doesn't it? But real surrender is nothing short of psychological extinction. Most people hear that word and think it means to relax, to breathe deeply, to let go of stress. But surrender isn't something you do, because there is no you to do it. This is where almost everyone gets lost. They try to surrender the ego, but the one trying to surrender is the ego. The harder you try, the deeper you stay trapped. That's why awakening feels impossible for so many, because the mind is trying to awaken from itself. It's like a dream trying to wake itself up. It can't. It has to end. Tolle didn't surrender through technique. He didn't repeat affirmations or force his mind into silence. He surrendered because his mind couldn't carry the weight anymore. It collapsed under its own illusion. That's the true meaning of letting go, not as a spiritual trick, but as an absolute recognition that you were never in control to begin with. The ego can meditate for decades and never wake up, because as long as you think you're the one doing it, you're still asleep. Real surrender happens the moment resistance burns out, when the illusion exhausts itself, when the seeker disappears. And that disappearance, that absence, is what the world calls enlightenment. But don't mistake it for joy, don't mistake it for bliss. What remains after the self dissolves isn't an emotion, it's awareness, silent, still, infinite. And the moment you see it, you realize it's been here all along. Part 7. The Science of Illusion. For centuries, awakening was considered something mystical, the privilege of monks, sages, or hermits who renounced the world. But now science is beginning to uncover what ancient traditions have been pointing to for thousands of years. The human mind lives inside an illusion. Inside your brain, there's a network called the default mode network, the area responsible for self-referential thinking, for that endless voice that says me, my story, my past. It's the storyteller in your head, the narrator that never stops talking. When people experience deep meditation, near-death states, or profound awakening, that network temporarily shuts down. For the first time, the voice goes silent, not because it's been defeated, but because it's no longer needed. And in that silence, what remains is pure awareness, the same field Tolle described after his collapse. Neuroscientists have scanned the brains of long-term meditators and found something astonishing: physical structural changes in the brain. The parietal lobe, the part responsible for the sense of separation and ego, literally thins. The illusion of I weakens at the biological level. This means awakening isn't just a poetic metaphor, it's a rewiring of consciousness itself. It's the moment your brain stops identifying with the constant noise and recognizes itself as awareness. When Eckhart Tolle's mind broke, it wasn't madness. It was a neurological reset, a collapse of the very system that generates personal suffering. And that's the mystery science is only beginning to touch. Because the truth is, awakening isn't supernatural. It's natural. It's what happens when the artificial identity finally burns away, revealing the consciousness that has been here all along. Part 8. The Age of Distraction. But here's the problem. We live in a time where silence is almost extinct. Every second of your life is filled with noise. Notifications, opinions, images, comparisons. You wake up and your mind is immediately hijacked by the digital world. Social media has taken the ego and supercharged it. It tells you who to be, what to want, how to appear. Every scroll reinforces the illusion that you are your thoughts, your image, your reputation. The attention economy is built on keeping you asleep. Every algorithm studies your fears and desires, feeding you just enough stimulation to keep you chasing. More validation, more distraction, more illusion. And here's the brutal truth. The more addicted you are to that noise, the further you move from awakening, because awakening can't happen while you're constantly being pulled outward. Eckhart Tolle's awakening happened in absolute stillness. No phone, no social media, no opinions. Just one man and the unbearable weight of his own mind. That silence, that stillness, created the space where the illusion could collapse. But today, most people will never experience that kind of silence, because the moment they feel it, they reach for their phones. That's why true awakening is becoming rare, even though everyone talks about it. The modern world has turned spirituality into entertainment. Endless quotes, sound bites, and motivational clips that make people feel awakened without ever waking up. They scroll through wisdom instead of living it. They chase insight instead of dissolving illusion. And so the ego adapts. It wears the mask of spirituality and keeps playing the game. You see, the system doesn't fear spirituality. It fears people who truly wake up, because a person who sees through illusion can't be controlled. And that's the hidden reason why your mind is constantly under siege, because the moment you see clearly, the entire game collapses. Part 9. The Collective Illusion. What's happening inside you is also happening on a global scale. The same false identity that causes personal suffering fuels the chaos of the modern world. Every war, every political divide, every act of hatred, all of it comes from the same root illusion, the belief in separation. When people believe their thoughts are real, they begin to defend them like territory. When they mistake opinions for identity, they fight to protect illusions that never existed. This is why humanity keeps repeating the same patterns, because the world is just the collective mind projected outward, billions of egos fighting for survival. If the world is to change, it won't happen through more thinking. It won't happen through more politics, more systems, more movements. The real revolution will begin when enough individuals see through the illusion of identity. Because when the illusion dies in one person, a ripple moves through the entire field of consciousness. When you wake up, you don't just change your life, you change reality itself. Awakening isn't personal, it's universal. It's not something that happens to you, it happens through you. That's the truth no one tells you. Part 10. The real work. So what does that mean for you, the man watching this, trying to understand where to begin? If meditation, reading, and self-improvement aren't enough, then what's left? The answer is not about doing, it's about noticing. Real awakening doesn't happen in temples or mountain caves. It happens in the traffic jam, at the office, in the middle of an argument. It happens when you catch yourself reacting, and for a split second you see it. You see the thought rise. You see the emotion take shape. You see the ego preparing its defense. And instead of fighting it, you watch. That's the moment awakening begins, not when you escape life, but when you face it with absolute awareness. Every emotion, every reaction, every discomfort is an opportunity to wake up, but you have to be willing to look, to stop running, to stop judging. Awakening is not something you practice, it's something you remember, something that's already here when the noise fades. Part 11. The final illusion. Most seekers spend their entire lives chasing awakening like a prize, a moment, a state, a final destination. They think, one day I'll get there, one day I'll be free. But what if there is no there? What if the truth has been right here all along, hidden behind the one who is searching? That's the last illusion, the illusion of time. Because the mind only knows two places to exist, the past and the future. It cannot exist now, and awakening only exists now. Every time you think, I'm not there yet, you're reinforcing the same illusion that keeps you asleep. Because who is it that's not there? Who is the one waiting to awaken? It's the ego, the very illusion that vanishes the moment you stop believing it. The truth isn't waiting for you, it's staring at you, it's breathing through you, it's what you've always been. Part 12. Seeing without the seer. There comes a moment in every man's life when the search runs out of energy, when you've read the books, tried the methods, and still feel like something's missing. That exhaustion, that moment when the mind finally admits defeat, is sacred. Because that's when awareness takes over, not as a reward, but as revelation. You realize you were never the one trying to wake up. You were never the one controlling life. You've been life itself, pretending to be someone searching for it. That's the cosmic joke. You've been looking for the key while holding it in your hand. You've been staring at the door while standing in the open field. The awakening isn't something that happens to you, it's what remains when everything false stops happening. That's why Eckhart Tolle's story resonates so deeply, because it reminds us that awakening doesn't come through effort, but through surrender, not through improvement, but through disappearance. He didn't become someone new, he stopped pretending to be someone at all. Part 13. Beyond the Seeker. So here's the truth most people will never hear. You can't force awakening, you can only stop resisting it. And resistance is subtle. It hides in your need to understand, to label, to make sense of things. It hides in your spiritual ambition, the silent voice that says, I'm almost there. But the more you chase it, the further it moves away. Because chasing implies distance, and there is no distance between you and truth. You are what you're seeking. You are the awareness behind every thought, behind every fear, behind every desire to awaken. It's always been here, silent, unmoving, untouched by the storms of your mind. You don't have to quiet the noise. You just have to see that you're not the noise. And in that seeing, the noise loses its power. That's awakening. Not a moment of ecstasy, not a lifetime of peace, but a recognition so simple that it slips past the mind entirely. You stop seeking, you stop resisting, and what remains is what's always been, awareness itself. Part 14, The Mirror of Truth. Look around you. The entire world is a mirror reflecting your own consciousness. The chaos, the confusion, the fear, all of it exists, because the human mind still believes it's separate, and every man who wakes up weakens that illusion just a little more. When you stop fighting your mind, when you stop defending your identity, when you stop believing that your thoughts define you, you create space. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see life as it is, not as you wish it to be, not as you fear it might be, but as it is, pure, raw, alive. That's the freedom you've been searching for, not the absence of pain, but the absence of resistance. When awareness flows through you without obstruction, life stops being a struggle. You no longer swim against the current. You become the current itself. You don't fight the storm. You are the sky that holds it. This is what real power feels like. Not control, but clarity. Not dominance, but presence. Part 15, The Moment of Seeing. So now we return to the very question that began it all. If I can't live with myself, who is the I and who is the myself? The moment you ask that question and truly look, not think, not analyze, just look, everything begins to shift. Because in that moment, you stop being the prisoner of thought and become the observer of thought. The observer isn't separate from life, it is life. Awakening doesn't come when the mind becomes quiet. It comes when you see the mind for what it is, a storyteller, not the truth. The seeker disappears, the search ends, and what remains is the silence that's been watching since the very beginning. That's who you are. Part 16, The End of the Search. You've been told awakening is about finding something new. It's not. It's about losing everything that isn't real. When the thoughts fade, when the story collapses, when the identity burns away, there's no sadness, only vastness. A freedom so complete that it doesn't even need to call itself free. That's the awakening they never told you about. Not the bliss of escape, but the stillness of presence. Not a reward for effort, but the natural state beneath all effort. Right now, as you listen to these words, awareness is already here. It doesn't need to be earned. It doesn't need to be understood. It only needs to be seen. So stop searching, stop running, stop waiting for the right moment, because this is it. This moment right now is everything you've been chasing. You are not the seeker. You are the seeing itself. You are not the voice in the mind. You are the silence between the words. That's the truth they've hidden from you. Not because it's secret, but because it's too simple for the mind to grasp. The search ends when you realize there was never anything to find. The awakening begins when you stop trying to wake up, because the truth was never out there. It's been here, watching the whole time. The truth they never told you about awakening isn't a lesson to be learned. It's a moment to be lived, and that moment is